Welcome everyone. Let's begin with new fresh story. Sarah had always been the quiet girl in school, blending into the background while others took center stage. She had a small group of friends, did well in her classes, and generally kept to herself. But there was one thing that set her apart, her intense crush on Michael. Michael was the kind of guy everyone noticed. Tall, with tousled dark hair and piercing blue eyes, he had an easy charm that made people gravitate towards him. He was the star of the basketball team and seemed to have a knack for making everyone laugh. To Sarah, he was perfect. She first noticed him in freshman year, and over the next few years her feelings only grew stronger. She collected every scrap of information about him, from his favorite band to his favorite food. She followed him on social media, liked every post, and watched every story. But she never found the courage to speak to him. As senior year began, Sarah made a decision. She would find a way to get closer to Michael. She started attending all the basketball games, cheering him on from the stands. She volunteered to help organize school events, hoping to catch his eye. But no matter what she did, he never seemed to notice her. One afternoon, Sarah was in the library, her usual sanctuary, when she stumbled upon an old dusty book hidden at the back of a shelf. It had no title on the cover, just an intricate design that seemed to pulse with a strange energy. Intrigued, she opened it and found it filled with ancient symbols and strange incantations. As she flipped through the pages, one spell caught her eye, a love spell. The book claimed it could make anyone fall deeply in love with the caster. Sarah's heart raced. Could this be the answer to her prayers? The instructions were simple. Gather a few personal items from the person you desired, perform the ritual under a full moon, and say the incantation. Sarah hesitated. She had never believed in magic or the supernatural, but something about the book felt real, and she was desperate. She decided to try it. Over the next few days, Sarah gathered the items she needed: a strand of Michael's hair from the back of his chair, a piece of paper with his handwriting, and a photograph of him she had taken at a basketball game. The full moon was approaching, and she knew this was her chance. On the night of the full moon, Sarah snuck out of her house and went to a secluded spot in the woods. She laid out the items, drew the symbols from the book on the ground, and lit a candle. Taking a deep breath, she recited the incantation. The air around her seemed to hum with energy, and for a moment, she felt a strange warmth envelop her. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. She blew out the candle and gathered her things, hoping the spell had worked. The next day at school, Sarah felt nervous and excited. Would Michael notice her now? As she walked down the hall, she saw him coming towards her. Her heart pounded in her chest. To her astonishment, he looked right at her and smiled. "Hey, Sarah," he said, stopping in front of her. "How's it going?" She could hardly believe it. "Hi, Michael, I'm good, thanks. How are you?" They chatted for a few minutes, and Sarah felt like she was floating on air. The spell had worked. Over the next few days, Michael sought her out more and more. They sat together at lunch, walked to class together, and even studied together in the library. Sarah was ecstatic. Her dream was coming true. But as the days passed, Michael's behavior started to change. He became more possessive, always wanting to know where she was and who she was with. At first, Sarah thought it was sweet, but soon it became suffocating. He would get angry if she talked to other guys, even her friends. One evening, as they were walking home from school, Michael grabbed her arm. "I don't like it when you talk to other guys," he said, his voice low and intense. "You're mine, Sarah. Only mine." Sarah pulled her arm away, fear creeping into her heart. "Michael, you're hurting me. What's gotten into you?" His expression softened, and he immediately apologized. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I just can't bear the thought of losing you." She tried to shake off the unease, but it only grew. Michael's obsession became more and more apparent. He started following her everywhere, calling her constantly, and even showing up at her house unannounced. Sarah felt trapped. She confided in her best friend Jenny, who was equally concerned. "This isn't normal, Sarah. You need to tell someone." But Sarah was too afraid. She had wanted Michael's attention for so long, but now it felt like a curse. She decided to go back to the library and see if the book had any answers. Maybe there was a way to reverse the spell. To her horror, when she returned to the library, the book was gone. She searched frantically, but it was as if it had never existed. Panic set in. How could she undo what she had done? That night, Sarah was woken by a tapping on her window. She opened her eyes to see Michael standing outside, his eyes wild and desperate. "Sarah, let me in," he pleaded. "I need to see you." Terrified, she shook her head. "No, Michael. You need to go home." He pounded on the window, his voice rising. "Let me in, Sarah. Now." She ran to her door and locked it, her heart racing. She could hear him outside, still calling her name. She grabbed her phone and called Jenny, her hands trembling. "Jenny, I need help. Michael is outside my house. I don't know what to do." "I'm coming over," Jenny said, her voice steady. "Stay inside and don't open the door." Sarah waited, her heart in her throat. She could still hear Michael outside, his voice growing more frantic. Then suddenly there was silence. She held her breath, straining to hear any sound. A few minutes later, Jenny arrived with her older brother, Tom. They found Michael lying unconscious in the front yard, his face twisted in anguish. Tom called the police and they took Michael away. The next day at school, rumors flew. Some said Michael had lost his mind, others whispered about the spellbook. But Sarah remained silent, her guilt and fear consuming her. She had wanted Michael's love, but she had never imagined it would turn into this. Weeks passed, and Sarah tried to move on. Michael was receiving treatment, and she hoped he would recover. But she could never forget the look in his eyes, the desperation and obsession that had consumed him. One evening, Sarah received a letter in the mail. There was no return address, just her name scrawled on the envelope. She opened it, her hands shaking. "Dear Sarah, you thought you could escape me, but you were wrong. I will always be with you, watching, waiting. You belong to me, forever. Love, Michael." The letter slipped from her fingers, and she felt a cold chill run down her spine. She realized too late that some things could never be undone. The shadow of Michael's obsession would haunt her forever, a constant reminder of the price she had paid for a forbidden love.